Dynell. If you have a young person who's struggling with online learning and you are looking for some strategies, you are in the right place. In fact, going back, the title of this is Help, Online Learning is Not Working for My Child. And I created this workshop because I'm hearing that from too many parents, and I thought I would offer some strategies that might be helpful. So today you are going to learn 4 particular things. One is how online learning is taxing our young people's brains. 2, we're going to identify the areas of struggle for your particular child. 3, we're going to learn how to create some solutions right here, right now, because we don't have time to wait for schools to solve this problem for us. And 4, we're going to talk about how you can get your teachers and counselors on board with you. So I hope you're in the right place and that you have some pencil and paper, because we're going to jump right in. By way of background, I am Dynell. I'm an educational therapist, and I'm a mom of a teen who learns differently. See my young guy over here. This lovely picture, these are my sisters and my mom and my Auntie Jean, and they just make my heart feel good, so I wanted to have them here with me. I homeschooled my son twice, once when he was in the 3rd grade, and then again in high school because of medical reasons. And he hates this picture, but I love this picture, excuse me, and I'm going to tell you why. To me, it represents what learning could be like for our kids. He's obviously doing the work, and he's obviously chilling and very relaxed, I should say. And of course, his little dog is with him almost everywhere. But that's the experience that I want for our young people this year. And again, he's with his dog. So at Dynell Garron trainings, we work primarily with teens, middle school and high school teens who are struggling in school. Some of them have a learning disability, a lot of them don't. Most of them have had a number of bad experiences or failed experiences with school. So they're pretty disengaged, or they're just feeling really low about their own abilities. So a lot of what I do is what I'm going to be doing with you today is really try to understand what's going on with them and then find ways to make learning work for them. We also help parents transfer the responsibility of learning to the kid. And I had to learn this as a parent, and it's been amazing, not only for my relationship with my son, but for his growth. So that means we are simultaneously working with parents and working with students. So why me? Well, I have been an educational therapist for 7 years now, and I absolutely love, love, love the work. My orientation is toward brain-based solutions, because I do believe that when we are looking at finding solutions for young people, paying attention to their working memory, their attention, their executive functions gets us so much closer to a solution, and it gets us there quicker. I also believe that writing and speaking is a form of organized thinking. So we spend a lot of time helping young people organize their thoughts so they can communicate them. My practice has been very small, but my community service, I'm so excited by it because I do feel like in some ways this is my social justice work. We have been able to help hundreds of young people in foster care and kinship care by developing assessments and learning plans for them, things that they don't have available to them and would not be able to afford because they can't afford an educational therapist. So I've created initiatives that have allowed us to serve many, many young people in that way, which is very rewarding. I've also volunteered at my son's school to teach 2nd graders how to read. That was so lovely. And we work a lot with caregivers to help them understand the special education process, the 504s and the IEPs and whatnot. The other reason I'm hoping that you'll hear from me today or appreciate what I'm sharing with you is because some of it is directly influenced by my experience as a parent, right? I have the skill set to help my child learn differently, but I was not prepared for the amount of stress that he would experience as a result of his diagnoses. And so a lot of what I'm sharing with you has been the work that I've done as a parent to help him in school. All right, so let's get grounded in the work. We are really going to use these as our guiding principles. One, I really believe that you already know a lot about your child's learning style and your child's struggles. I also believe that if I could give you a little more information about how the brain is functioning and learning and what happens when it's overloaded, that will help you even more. And the reality is, we don't have to wait for schools to help us with this. And a lot of schools can't help us with this yet because they're still trying to figure it out. So I hope you're ready to jump in. All right. The goal is to help our young people with online learning. And I'm going to ask you to work with me in 3 specific stages. We're going to do some investigation to figure out what exactly is going on with your kid. We're going to look at interventions, and then we're going to extend an invitation to your teachers and your counselors, because really you're going to be asking them to follow your lead. So let's start with the investigation. 2 pieces to it. The tip of the iceberg, meaning what we see, and then the actual brain functioning itself. The sources of information for your investigation are similar to the ones that are available to me as an educational therapist, right? I really dig deeply into parents' observations. You know your kid better than anyone else. I do ask you to have a conversation with your child. Normally I would in my practice, but you're doing this work. So I'm going to guide you through a conversation with your young person. And if there are any other trusted adults in your world who you feel have a good sense of your kid, you can talk to them as well, but it's not necessary, because my goal is for you to be able to come up with some solutions fairly quickly. So we don't want to wait a day. We don't want to wait 2 weeks. We actually want you to be able to do this within a 2-hour time frame, start to finish. All right, so mom, dad, grandma, auntie, caregiver, what do you know about your kid? I'm going to suggest that you know more than you think you do. And I'm going to ask you to reflect in 3 distinct ways. First of all, I'd like you to think about the experiences in school where your child is feeling really great. They're just in flow and they just feel comfortable and relaxed and they're learning. So as you pull that image up or into your awareness, I want you to think about, who is your child working with? What exactly are they doing? What time of the day is this happening? Where is your child when this is taking place? Why do you think this feels good to your kid? And whatever they're working on, what meaning does it have for them? So that's your first reflection. Now, we don't have time to slow down and do it now, but this is the process that you will walk through. Second reflection, think about a very, very stressful experience. This might be a time when your child just shut down completely or blew up, right? Or even cried out of frustration around school. So if you can bring that experience into your awareness and ask yourself the very same questions. Who were they with? What was going on? What time of the day was it? Etc. But you're going to add now another set of questions, which is, how stressful was this experience? So if we think about baseline being, I'm having a pretty good day. I'm not particularly happy, not particularly sad, but you know what? Things are going okay. Midline is, I'm really frustrated, but it's tolerable. And then 10 over the top is, of course, over the top, right? Blowout, shutdown, crying, whatever that looks like. When you're thinking about this stressful experience for your teen, I'd like you to rate the stress level too. And now the third reflection is, when your kid was really, really stressed, what did they do to feel better? So we're going to look at it from an environmental perspective. What was happening in the space? Did they move to another room? Did they put their music on? Did they, how did they change their environment in a way that helped them? Number 2, what were the mechanics that shifted? So was your child reading something, for example, and just got frustrated because they couldn't understand it, and then they remembered that there was a lecture on video and they listened to the lecture and that made it better? Or was your child doing things that they could choose? Was their voice and choice? Or were they just being told what to do over and over and over, and they started feeling the frustration of that mount? And lastly, when they calmed down, did they do it by themselves or did they need a helper? And then if you can get to this, it's not necessary, but what were they saying? What do you think they were saying to themselves during this process? And now the second step is for you to talk to your young person. Well, we're not going to give them that list of questions, but there are 4 things that I think you can ask that would really help inform our investigation. So the first one is really just being casual. Is there a part of school that feels really natural, where you really get to flow? Tell me about it. And you're listening for answers to all the questions we just spoke about. Second question. Now this one says, do you get stressed or uncomfortable? But we've seen our kids at home this last semester, or last semester of last year, and we're also seeing them at home now learning. So we may already have some really good evidence about stress. So you might just say, on Tuesday you were really, really frustrated. What was going on for you? And you want to probe, tell me more, right? Number 3, when you first started feeling stress, what was going on in your body? In other words, where do you feel stress? Where do you register the first signs of stress in your body? This is a very important question because it helps our young people start to become aware, and then they can do something about it before it gets too big. It'll also help you be able to come up with interventions, all right? And number 4, when you've been stressed about school, what did you do to feel better? How did you make yourself feel better? You really want to pay attention to that because that tells us what our young people need. I hope this is making sense for you. And I hope this feels doable. All right, so now that you've gathered all this information, and I would say maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes of reflection for you, maybe a short conversation with your young person, now you need to step back and you need to build a profile. And this is what we educational therapists do. We build a profile. And our profile is based on a lot of things, looking at grades, talking to teachers, looking at but what we're looking for are patterns. We're looking for patterns. What struggles are coming up the most? And then in this case, what is happening that's bringing their stress from a 0 to a 5 or a 5 to a 10, right? You want to really, number 2 here, explore the child-generated solutions because they innately know what they need. Now, they may not go about getting it the right way, but they know what they need. So you really want to take some time and reflect on what they have told you about how they recover from stress. The other reason why you want to do this is because we use language with teachers. We use the language of stress-based behaviors. So our kids aren't necessarily being defiant. And what they're doing may be disruptive in school, but 9 times out of 10, it's because they're trying to get a need met. So we use the term stress-based behaviors. And then you want to get a sense of the degree of stress, but here's the magic question. If you in your reflections can identify what happened just before the blow up or what happened just before the shutdown, because there's your tipping point. Are you feeling clever? I'm feeling kind of clever. All right. So we've gotten through the tip of the iceberg, a little bit of work to do there, right? Probably 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, including your reflection. And you should be writing all of this down and really giving yourself time to think about it. I want to talk about the brain functioning now. Our brain is amazing. It really is amazing. And it's incredibly complex. So what I'm doing is I'm simplifying our conversation to focus on 3 distinct areas that are greatly needed for efficient learning. And that is our attention system, our working memory, and our executive function. So let's do one at a time. Young people who have ADHD or attentional problems, a lot of people say they just don't pay attention. But actually what's happening is they're paying attention to everything. And so our attention should be a filter. It should filter out what is not important and allow in what is important. Young people who have attention problems, their filters are bad. So you can think of attention as a gateway, right? Letting in what's important, keeping out what's not important right now. What happens to the information that's important in awareness? It moves into working memory. And working memory, you can think of it as a big bowl that's a mixing bowl. Because what happens is information comes into your working memory and it has to connect to old information. And then it gets in there and it mixes up the information to create something totally new. And that is learning. Learning is mixing new information with old information, doing this whole mixing up thing, and then creating something new knowledge, new info. And that's what learning is. Working memory is incredibly fragile, incredibly fragile. Executive functions, you can think of executive functions as the big conductor of an orchestra, because when our executive functions are really strong, it allows these other systems to work without a glitch, right? So these are the thinking skills that allow you to do the work in working memory, but it also allows your student to pause. It also allows your student to persist when things get tough. And it has a lot to do with your student's ability to tolerate frustration. So let's look at an example. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Please close your eyes. And I'm going to ask you to mentally complete this equation. 16 plus 48 minus 35. Go ahead and calculate that with your eyes closed. Now please open your eyes. I want to say that you see this guy over here who's chilling, he's happy. That means all of our systems are go. All of these systems are working. So what that would look like is your gateway, your attention, it brought into your awareness everything exactly as it should be. It brought into your awareness the 16, the plus sign, the 48, the minus sign, the 35, right? It totally brought everything in perfectly. Because right now your systems are all go. In working memory, what did you find yourself doing? Did you visually line up the numbers and start calculating the ones and the tens? Or did you have to do something else? Did you feel yourself holding those numbers and manipulating at the same time? That is your working memory. And your executive functions were fine. You weren't feeling overly stressed by it. Your ability to regulate allowed you to do the work in working memory. Okay, I hope this makes sense. So now let's look at what happens when these systems are overloaded. And isn't this, these gears are moving to represent overload. All right, if your system of attention is overloaded, you probably didn't get all the information in correctly. So you may have gotten the 16, but you got an 8, not 48, right? Or maybe you got the 16 and the 48, but you put a minus. So 16 minus 48 plus 35, the attentional system is challenged. There's going to be a glitch. Now let's get over to working memory here. Let's say you brought everything into your awareness perfectly. Let's say you closed your eyes and you saw the 16 plus the 48 minus the 35, okay? So you may have done this. 6 plus 8 is 14, carry the 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. Okay, so the answer is 58. But now we're gonna take 58 minus 35. What happened here? We forgot that we carried a 1, so it's really not 58, it's 68. Let's say you even got the 68 right, but now you can't remember if it's a plus or a minus. You can't remember that third calculation. That's a working memory issue, right? Sometimes when kids have a problem with working memory, they'll be in the middle of an assignment and they'll look up and go, wait, what are we supposed to be doing? Working memory. Okay, executive functions. Remember, when they're working, they allow you to do the work. When they're not working well, or they interfere with the work. So this is what it might look like. I asked you to close your eyes. You're thinking 16 plus 48 minus 35. You might be saying, instead of getting down to work, I don't even know how I'm going to approach this. Am I going to line them up vertically? Or am I going to say 16 is close to 20 and 48 is close to 50? So I'm going to take 20 plus 50. But then you might just be stuck on, I don't even know how to approach this, right? You could be totally avoidant. You know what? I think I need a snack first, and then I'll come back and do this work. Or you could have in your mind, this is way too hard. My brain is tired. Or you could be overloaded just by the fact that there are so many numbers. Do you hear all that interference? This is not learning, this is interference. So now I want to talk about online learning because this is our new normal. And my premise is that online learning taxes our attention, our working memory, and our executive functions systems. And I'm going to tell you how. So when we are in a social situation, our brain is naturally scanning the environment, looking for visual cues to know how we're doing. Are we being socially acceptable? Did they understand what I said? Am I still accepted in this arena, right? Online, those visual cues are not there, but our brain naturally searches for those cues. So it's working overtime trying to find something that doesn't exist. Number two, this concept of split attention really helped me understand more about online learning. So I wanted to share it with you. So the best way to explain it is to imagine that you are in a movie theater where you know exactly where to focus your attention, right in front. Now, and if someone is coming down the aisle and you're sitting on the aisle seat, you're going to temporarily look up at the person coming down the aisle. So your attention is forward and to the side, but that's it. When we are in an online learning environment in a gallery view, our brain considers every square a separate, discrete piece of information that needs to be processed. So the brain is not quite sure where we should focus. All right, number three, we don't have control over every online learning environment. So this could be something as simple as someone running around in the background of a student, right? It's pulling our attention away. It's making it difficult to know what information is important. Even though we know we should be focusing, it's just too much happening. This could also be another example of this could be too many visuals on the screen. And the student is just not clear about what is the most important piece of information. Number four, flipping between screens to access notes and flipping between the screen to access the lecture or the video and the lecture or the video and then type in notes. That is so exhausting for our working memory because you have to hold on to the information that you just gathered and hold on to it enough to write your notes. And if you do that a lot, it becomes very taxing. Lastly, I think many of us parents understand this one, managing multiple teachers in a portal. Every teacher has a different way of posting information. They don't always post it at the same time. They may send an email update, but another teacher may not put the updates in an email. They might put them in announcements. So you have to know where to go to get what information on a regular basis, right? And this last one, number six, is something that I think we're going to start hearing more and more about. But in order for us to communicate clearly online, we have to have verbal skills that are really, really fine-tuned. Now, a young person who has a verbal challenge can go through the school day not speaking a whole lot and still get what they need. But online, we have to have verbal processing skills for almost everything, right? So that taxes your executive functions because you have to plan what you're going to say. It taxes your working memory because you have to hold on to your original thought until it's your turn. And then you have to make sure that you deliver what you wanted to say at that time. And then if you have any language challenges going on, it's making it hard. So I say all that to say, with all the work we have to do just to process online learning, what is there left for content? What is there left for content? All right, so let's recap where we are. We just completed our investigation. You've had the conversations that you need to have with yourself and your student. You have some reflections. You have a profile. We've also talked about what's happening in the brain in these three systems in particular. And now we're going to see how we use this information. We're going to jump to interventions. And our interventions are organized by the system of attention, working memory, or executive function, but that's not the main story. The main story is this. Based on what you see on your profile, I would like you to be able to identify possible interventions. So we're going to go through these together. So if on your profile you noted that your child is mentally drained from having to focus for extended periods of time, it might be a challenge with attention. If your child is unable to remember all of the instructions, or they often misunderstand the instructions, and that would sound like, she told me what she wanted me to do, my teacher, and I did it, and she said it's wrong, right? Or if they get back work and there are lots of mistakes or lots of corrections, and your child just hates to slow down, and so they're rushing through, they're overlooking the mistakes, they're repeating the mistakes, it's probably a challenge with attention. If they need constant reminders to stay on task, or high levels of avoidance, they just don't do the work. Now, I will say, avoidant behavior looks like it is a discipline problem. But 9 times out of 10, my experience working with teens is avoidant behavior saves them from feeling shame and disappointment. And usually the disappointment is with themselves. So rather than have that experience yet again, they often choose just not to do the work. I'm going to move on now to what you might try. So if you see any of these showing up, these are some things that we can try. We can ask our teacher for preview materials, right? Can we get the outline? Can we get a mind map? Can we get your presentation notes? Because that helps our child who has attentional challenges know what's going on. We want to ask the teacher to cue for important information and make the connections between material very explicit. Remember I said working memory is working on new information, linking to old information. If it does not link to old information, it has nothing to work with, and that information will just disappear. So those connections are vital. And what we're seeing a lot of young people lose the connections because they're in an online environment that's just a little bit more chaotic, more for them to manage. So you want to ask your teacher to explicitly make those connections. I recommend that we request examples of completed projects or assignments. Rubrics are not enough. It leaves too much to chance, especially in this learning environment. Okay, and I'm going to let you go. We're going to keep going because I'm very aware of the time and I want to get through this. So now, if you see on your profile some of these things, this might indicate there's a working memory challenge, right? So if your young person continues to forget to complete parts of the assignment, or they say, oh, I didn't know I had to complete part D, or I didn't know, it's probably a working memory issue, something we can look at, right? We already talked about if they forget what they're working on in the middle of an assignment. Sometimes young people who have a working memory challenge find it very, very difficult to dig into details. And often their responses are very, very short and very general in nature. You might have your young person say, this is just class moves too fast. I'm lost. I can't keep up, right? Or if I studied for a test and I just couldn't remember when it was time to take the test and I'm really frustrated. And we hear this a lot. I don't get it. I don't get it, right? I just don't get it. They're not making the connections with new information and old information. And sometimes they just don't have a frame of reference. So here's what you're going to ask your teachers for. First of all, you're going to say to your student, instead of, hey, how's it going? You're going to say, hey, what are you working on? Ooh, how does that connect to what you already know? Or ooh, how does that connect to the last class? And if they're not able to tell you what that connection is, get on the phone with the teacher because they're not learning. They need to have those connections in order to learn. We're going to ask the teacher to use their weekly check-ins with your students, and I do hope they're having them, to check for understanding of assignments and key concepts, right? To make sure that they understand the big picture, not get mired down in all the little detail. And this one is really, really important. We want to have information that we say is dual coded. That means it's coded for your visual system and it's coded for your auditory system. So we want material to be offered and visually, just like I am with this PowerPoint, and verbally, so that a student can listen and see at the same time. The other thing is, note the energy of your child throughout the day. If there's some heavy lifting to do, some heavy brain work they need to do, see if it can be done late morning, because the energy starts to drain right at the end, toward the end of the day. I'm going to move on now to executive functions. So we talked about them being the executive functions being the big orchestra leader, right? What you're going to see when there is dysfunction, a lot of emotions, very strong emotions, right? And I made some notes here because you may also see your young person not able to find whatever. They can't find their notebook. They can't find the pencil. They can't find this. Or they're just overwhelmed. It's just too much, right? Or they wrote the answers in the wrong place. They didn't know that I didn't know that I had to do the discussion. I did my discussion. So, the discussion boards, what I see quite often is I put my information in the discussion board, but they've missed the fact that they have to reply to 2 other students, right? That's poor planning, poor organization, really, really missing those instructions. The other thing is, when we talk about time management, we're talking about waiting to the last minute. We're talking about late assignments. And we're talking about assignments that are way too big because they didn't chunk them down. We're going to go on here and we're going to look at missing assignments, a lot of them, and messy notebooks, right? Just things not in the proper place. So here are some things that I think are really important, and I want to talk about the syllabus. For those of you who have a student in high school, you want to walk through the syllabus with your students so that they're very, very clear about attendance policies, test retake policies, late assignment policies. That's super important. Everyone should help their young person bookmark the pages that they need to go to get information or submit assignments. And we want to teach our young people to take screenshots, because when they're conversing with their teachers to get help, we want them to be able to articulate specifically where they're challenged. A couple of other things I want to talk about. The second bullet point over here, I recommend that we have a request to teachers to have office hours once a week, but only by phone, because we know what's happening with online learning. And when they're having this phone conversation, your young person has a notebook and a pencil, right? We want to request a visual outline of the class structure if a routine has not yet been established, because our young people need structure and they need routine in order to settle down. And this is especially important in a class where a young person feels like they are lost. We want them to know what the pattern is of activity so they can focus on the lesson. The last thing I'm going to say here is any zero. So we have a policy in my house. If you get a 0, you have to turn that assignment in 48 hours. And if a 0 is still in your portal, on your grade sheet in your portal for a week, we investigate right away. Because what happens oftentimes is our students think they've turned in the assignment, and in fact they haven't. Or they did a lab in this program and they think that it's recorded, but it's not. They're supposed to do something with that lab and put it in a different place. So online learning assignment turning in process can be very, very tricky. So we don't allow zeros to linger. That's just the kiss of death. Oh, the last thing I really do want to point out, because I think this is very important. In the past, when our young people were going to school, for some reason, they were able to hold it together all day in school. And these are kids who are struggling, right? They hold it together all day in school, and then they come home and explode. So there was always a place to let it out. And now with home and school blending, we're losing the ability for our young people to let it out, and they have to let it out. So my ask of you is that you work with your young person to create a ritual that signals school is starting and signals school is over. So a simple example would be, at the end of your school day, pack your backpack, close your laptop, and enjoy your day. right? So the opposite would be at the beginning of your school day, open your backpack, get your materials ready, lay out your pencils, boom, have a good day. But they need to have that demarcation of a beginning and an ending so that they have a place then to let it out. There needs to be that difference, okay? Oh, I have to say this last thing. So breaking assignments into small steps, we all know that we need to do that. But given what I've shared with you about the cognitive demands of online learning, I would like to ask that those steps be even tinier. And here, I'm going to give you a tip. My son and I have an agreement. He has executive function challenges and task initiation. Oh my gosh, he has the hardest time getting started. So we have an agreement that when he is having a hard time starting, he's going to come and ask for help because we just can't let things linger, right? So he said, I hate to ask you this, but I'm having a really hard time getting started. So I said, okay, 30 seconds. Get everything ready. And for 30 seconds, I want you to dig deep. I want you to go all out. I want you to start with everything you have in you. And I'm only saying you have to do it for 30 seconds. And at the end of 30 seconds, if that doesn't feel good to you, then we'll start again. But of course, once he got started, he didn't stop. And later he said, I don't know what you did, but that was really a great, that really helped me a lot. So take that 30-second idea if you think that'll work for you, okay? Oh, I wanted to say that these excerpts are, what I'm sharing with you here is an excerpt of a training that I just put together. It's called Online Learning Rescue, and it walks parents through this in much more detail, right? You have about 20, maybe 25 interventions, I think 20. In the book, we have a ton, or in the program, we have a ton. And it's not the volume that's important, it's just the options that are available. All right. This is a lot to take in. And what I want to say to you is that, you know what, we value progress over perfection. There will be no perfection this year. There will be no perfection this year. I have said that to my son. I've said that to myself. I'm going to share that with you. I'm not trying to be perfect. I don't want to see perfect, but I do want us to do our best. And I'm sharing this with you to say, you may not get to every single difficulty your child is having. You shouldn't expect to. But if you can identify the one that's giving them the most challenge, and if you can do the work that we just outlined, that's progress, right? And it doesn't have to be scientific. There's no reason why you cannot do what I just shared with you. I absolutely believe in you, and I know that you can do this. Just take the step. So we've done a lot of work, investigation, we have a list of interventions. Now let's invite the teachers to get on board with us, right? I wanted to make the distinction that this is not a conversation about special education testing or services, an IEP or a 504. That's a very separate conversation that has a very formal structure. This is just a conversation you are having with the teacher to bring some relief to your young person so they can engage in learning, because no one needs to be miserable this year, right? And I want your person to just learn in a way that's relaxing and also self-affirming for them. So here's where I start. And now I'm speaking to you as a mom. My son's name is Josiah, so we call it the J team. Not everyone has earned the right to be on my J team. That's my inner circle. But everyone in his school is responsible for helping him grow and learn. That is my expectation as a parent. And I feel really comfortable saying that because you know what? They want the same thing. The teachers and the counselors that I have worked with as a parent over the years, they want the same thing that I want. We all want this child, my son, to learn. So we start with that premise of collaboration, and we start with the premise of, if I can help you, I can help you by telling you what my child needs. And I can help you by implementing that at home. And now I'm inviting you to join me in this. So the phrases I have made them very specific because I think they have a tone, but of course, do what you need to do, change them the way you need to. But we first start the email, and this is just a very quick email. We appreciate dear teacher, I appreciate what you're facing, and I really appreciate the time you're going to take to read this, right? I'm writing to share some observations with you and offer suggestions to address them. Now, I didn't call the teacher out. I didn't throw my kid under the bus. I am using the tool of observation. And here is how I think we should say it. And every email includes only one ask, right? So I've noticed when Sarah is doing something, she experiences a great deal of frustration because the reason. And when that occurs, she blah, 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 whatever that is. I think we can get better results if we, and include your ask. And if we can do it or get it, it would be really helpful for Sarah. Please let me know what you think and then include your contact information. Now, I did put a sample letter down here. This is a different type of letter. It's a more formal letter, but I did like the way it was organized. This is nothing more than an email, though. It's a very quick email. And I'm going to give you some examples of how you've used those phrases. Remember, we said, I've noticed. So I've noticed when Sarah is working on her packet, she experiences a great deal of frustration because she doesn't remember what a thesis statement should include or how to use textual evidence. And when that occurs, she gets very discouraged. I think we can get better results if we can look at your teaching notes or presentation again, right? Here's another example. I've noticed when Sarah is writing her lab report, she experiences a great deal of frustration because she doesn't know what to include after she describes what she did. Basically, she's missing the part of the analysis, right? And when that occurs, Sarah gets very anxious because she wants to get a good grade in your class. I think we can get better results if we can look at a completed lab report, period. Last one. I've noticed when Sarah is in the 1:30 class, she experiences a great deal of fatigue because she's been online since 8 o'clock. And when that occurs, she has a really hard time focusing in your class. I think we can get better results if Sarah can have time off camera during your class. I will be near her to make sure she's engaged. If we can do that, that would be so helpful. Please let me know what you think. Who are you sending this to? You're sending it to the teacher and you're CCing a counselor. If there's a special education team involved, I would CC them. And if there are disciplinary consequences for some of these requests, i.e. not being on camera, I would CC the vice principal as well. Because basically what I'm saying in my email is this is what we are going to do. And I really invite you to join me because we have to make it doable for our young people. So let's recap what we've done. We had an investigation. We've identified some interventions and we just extended the invitation to the teacher and the counselor. So we're wrapping up here. Did we do what we said we were going to do here? Do you have a greater understanding of how online learning increases the demands in the areas of attention, working memory, and executive function? I hope so. I do believe you now have a way to identify areas of breakdown for your child because you're going to go through that investigation process. Do you have a mechanism to create solutions right here, right now? Absolutely you do, because you have a list of interventions that you can go to. And you've seen an example of how to get teachers and counselors on board. All right, I want to say, I hope this was helpful. It's so hard to do this without seeing faces or hearing, seeing comments in a chat. But my goal, my hope is that you have some tools now that are going to be helpful for you. You are the secret sauce. You are the ones who can make this possible, this learning experience different for your child. I am the one who can make it different for my kid. And I love being able to do that. And so that's why I'm extending it to you. We are here. If you need some assistance, please reach out. I am really happy to respond to emails. If you send a request and you get some positive feedback, would you please let me know? Because I think it's really wonderful for other parents to know that this is more than possible. And the last thing I want to say is I feel like this was a very meaty conversation. And what I would really like to do is extend it. And so I'm going to do a live online 2-hour training in this presentation, but we're going to pause, we're going to go deeper, and we're going to share learnings with our peers. And so if you're interested in that, you can go to our website, or you can shoot me an email and let me know if that's something of interest to you. I wish you the absolute best year. I know you can do this work, and I thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye now.